Welcome to Practical AI. If you work in artificial intelligence, aspire to, or are curious how AI-related tech is changing the world, this is the show for you. Thank you to our partners at Fly.io, the home of changelog.com. Fly transforms containers into micro VMs that run on their hardware in 30-plus regions on 6 continents, so you can launch your app near your users. Learn more at Fly.io.
What's up, friends? Do you remember when ChatGPT launched? I do. It felt like the LLM was this magical tool out of the box. However, the more you use it, the more you realize that's just not the case. The technology is brilliant, don't get me wrong, but it's prone to issues like hallucination on its own, but there's hope. There is still hope. Feed the LLM reliable current data, ground it in the right data and context, then and only then can it make the right connections and give the right answers. The team at Neo4j has been exploring how to get results by pairing LLMs with knowledge graphs and vector search. Check out their podcast episode about LLMs and knowledge graphs throughout 2023 at graphstuff.fm. They share tips on retrieval methods, prompt engineering, and so much more. Don't miss it. Find a link in our show notes. Yes, check it out, graphstuff.fm, episode 23.
Welcome to another episode of Practical AI. This is Daniel Whitenack. I am founder and CEO at Prediction Guard, where we're safeguarding private AI models. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Chris Benson, who is a principal AI research engineer at Lockheed Martin. How you doing, Chris?
Doing great today, Daniel. How's it going?
It's going great. I am sometimes perplexed throughout my workday, but generally the week has gone well, and I'm really excited because hopefully our guest today will provide a lot of ways for us to navigate through the perplexity.
I hope he finds that punny.
Yes, of course. We have with us today Denis Yarats, who is the CTO and co-founder at Perplexity. Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me, and great to be on this show.
Yeah. Well, we've been wanting to make this one happen for a good long while. Of course, been following the things that Perplexity has been doing. Really impressive and inspiring work, and just really excited to hear a little bit about that story, and also this kind of space of giving people knowledge with generative AI, with language models, search more generally. Maybe could you set us up by maybe talking through, of course, people have everyone's kind of followed this surge of generative AI over the last couple of years, but there's been kind of a segment of that has focused a lot on kind of answering questions, discovering knowledge, curiosity, exploring topics, an intersection with search more generally, I guess. So could you kind of help us understand maybe that journey, how that's kind of developed, and how also you and the co-founders of Perplexity kind of came upon your approach to that?
Yeah, that's definitely been like very fascinating. Almost 2 years, I guess. I think like in general, like web search, right? So like, what do you want to ultimately get is an answer to your question, right? So it's the current iteration that we had, like when was Google and all the other like classical search engines is an approximation to get to this point, right? So you have your question, you ask it as a formal query, and then you get like a bunch of documents that are very relevant, but you have to still do ultimate sort of like, you have to do like additional work to get to the bottom of it, right? So you have to scan through the documents, you have to, for yourself, understand what is this a true answer? If it's a not true answer, kind of like have to trust the information. And as you can imagine, it's a lot of work, especially if you're trying to search for something very complicated, maybe things that are not so obvious. And would it be nice to kind of like avoid that step, right? Where you just like answer a question and you ask the question and you get an answer right away. So that's kind of like ultimate destination where we're trying to get. Obviously, there has been It's been tough to get there over last like decade or so. It's, there's been like a lot of work, but it never quite worked. There is this like a much higher level of hallucinations, much higher level of maybe not perfect synthesis of the information. You kind of like basically get like a Frankenstein. So like instead of like a coherent and nice, easily parsable, readable answer, you get like some just like basically extracted pieces of the information and you just like concatenate it together. So like not very pleasant. And it's funny that when we started, so one of our angel investor was Jeff Dean. It requires like no introduction, and he was saying, that Google actually wanted to always build something like this, but it's just because they have like such high expectations for accuracy, because like millions of billions of users using Google, right? And like if you like hallucinate like 1% of the time, you're gonna get a lot of unhappy people, and so they would never able to, because of the models were like not as strong as they are right now. They were never able to get it to just like 99.9% of accuracy, right? And that's why kind of like this work never pan out. And but something great happened, 2022, right? So when we started our company, we kind of, both myself and Aravind, my co-founder, and we come from like academics, right? So we've been doing like a lot of research on like language modeling, reinforcement learning, and stuff like that. And he was actually at OpenAI at that time. Like we've been very like clearly following improvements of GPT models like GPT-2 and then GPT-3. That's where it's actually got very interesting. And it was kind of like became obvious there is going to be something there, right? So, and this was the primarily motivation for us to start a company. We wanted to build an answer engine from the get-go, but it was kind of like very ambitious. I remember we would go to the investors and they would say like, oh, we're going to build a search engine, and they're like start like looking at you like you're crazy, which is makes a lot of sense. They would say like, oh, there's Google already, and they had like a fair point, but we still kind of like weren't like very discouraged by that. We knew there is like something there, and we started like prototyping. So the first version of Perplexity we actually created as a Slack bot or like Discord bot, where it kind of like was a very primitive combination of a search engine plus at that point it was like DaVinci 2 model, so it's still pre-chat GPT, and it's kind of like worked much better than I expected. It was like very quick, like we put it up this demo like in a couple of days, and it was like you can already see that it in certain cases it is very helpful. Like because this was like very early company, we were like trying to hire like one of our first engineers, and we didn't know like how to organize the insurance for him or like what it, and so we actually used this bot to like ask those questions about insurance, because if you go to Google and start asking the questions about insurance, you're going to get a lot of ads, and you just going to get very quickly disappointed.
I've appreciated that same thing in founding a company and using these models in that way. It's been useful.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was kind of like useful, so we were kind of like been trying it out and like playing with it. But then what really started happening is like I think like it was like a couple of weeks before ChatGPT, they OpenAI released this DaVinci 3 model. And I literally remember very clearly like changed the model name and start asking the same questions that I would asking before, and I could see right away it's just like so much better. It's just like so much better at understanding of your intent, so much better at like understanding where like what should it say, what it should not say, so much better like synthesizing the answer. And I was just like really like blown away. And I was like, okay, so there is like definitely something there. And then obviously like ChatGPT happens like a few weeks after, and we were like, okay, so we have to like our initial product was actually, because as I mentioned, we came from academic background, like our citations were like the core component, because it was like very clear to us from the beginning, like if you want to get an answer, you want to make sure it's accurate. You want to make sure you can verify it. And so the citation was like the sort of like first class citizen in our product. And then when ChatGPT came out, we was like, okay, so one of the biggest point of feedback for them was, okay, so I don't know, like if this is accurate information, if it's not, if it's hallucination, if it's not, how would I verify it? And that's why we like decided, okay, so this seems like a good opportunity to release our product. We like literally in a matter of like 2 days put up a website connected to our like backend that we had, and just like obviously did not expect that it's gonna be people going to use it, and like the usage is going to grow as much as possible. But coming back to your original question, I think like what happened was just like literally this in a matter of like days or month. I mean, obviously it follows like a lot of many years of research, but like it was very clear step function in the quality of the generated answers. And you can like literally, if you sort of like spend some time playing with it, you can clearly see that it's now becomes very, very good. We also realized at that time, okay, so like models only going to get better, things only going to get like faster and cheaper. So there is a lot of stuff to build here.
For those who are still kind of learning about your organization and what you're offering, could you step back for a second? And like if you were talking to Jeff Dean or another investor, kind of giving them the elevator pitch about what you're doing specifically and how it's differentiated from the GPTs and stuff out there, how do you define that? How do you describe yourself in terms of the specific opportunity that you're pursuing?
The fastest way to get the most accurate answers to your questions. I think that's this essentially like answer engine, and we kind of like one of the first people who coined this term.
And can you differentiate that from a search engine a little bit there?
Yeah. So basically, in a search engine, right? So you get like all the way. It's like as I mentioned before, in the search engine, you have to search first. You get the documents. Let's say you have like top 10 results, and you have to scan through all of them and identify the information to get your answer. Here, we kind of like we do this step for you. So we take the first step of the retrieval of the relevant documents, and then we synthesize them into a human readable, nicely formatted answer that you can then, like, if needed, if you want to get more information, then you can click on the citations that are kind of like nicely attributed for each sentence, and then you can like learn more information. And so we kind of like wanted to do things like very simple. We were like early on identified, so there is like two things we care about. This is accuracy and then speed, because this is, you want to get information fast. Google trained us all to get instant search results. And I think that was like very important. And early on, it was like kind of like challenging because those models were like very slow. Our like infrastructure was not very advanced to do that. So like I remember like very first version, you would have to wait for like 3 seconds or like 5 seconds to get an answer. It was like very slow, but because it was like such a better experience than just like looking at the search results at Google. So people still would use it. But our ultimate goal was like, okay, so can we be as fast as possible? So yeah, so the main differentiator is just we care a lot about quality. So we minimize the chance of things being inaccurate or like hallucinate. And we want to do it as fast as possible. And so that's kind of like distinguish us from Google, because, Google doesn't, for example, generate the answers, even though like more recently they started doing this, which is kind of like validated our idea. And ChatGPT probably primarily focuses on like different things, but I guess also more recently they started doing web search as well.
What's up, friends? I love Backblaze, and I'm happy to have them as a sponsor. Backblaze makes backing up and accessing your data astonishingly easy. This is a service I personally use. Go to backblaze.com/practicalai. You get unlimited cloud backups for Macs, PCs, businesses for just $99 a year. You can easily protect business data through a centrally managed admin, protect all the data on your machines automatically, easily deploy across multiple workstations with various deployment options. You can add on enterprise control, including granular access permissions, advanced single sign-on, group management controls, and compliance support. They even offer multiple restore options, including rapid recovery in the event of data loss or ransomware. That sucks. You can access your backed up data from anywhere in the world using their web app or their iOS or Android app. You can even restore by mail. They'll give you a hard drive with all your data shipped to your door. You buy a hard drive restore, send the hard drive back within 30 days, and get a full refund. You get 1 year file retention and version history, over 55 billion with a B files restored for customers so far. Visit backblaze.com/practicalai so they know where you came from and continue to support the show. This is a service obviously recommended by me, but also by New York Times, Inc. Magazine, Macworld, PC World, LifeWire, Wired, Tom's Guide, 9to5Mac, and just so many more. You receive a fully featured no-risk trial at backblaze.com/practical AI. Again, they're supporting the show. Go there, play with it, start protecting yourself from potential bad times. Start today.
So you mentioned a few things there. You mentioned web search, you mentioned retrieval, you mentioned the large language model. So at least in kind of how I think about it, and maybe others categorize it differently, there's one element of information that you can get from an LLM, which is I'm going to put in a prompt and it's going to generate text, and that may contain some facts or made up facts or some text, but it may be informational, right? So there's some sort of knowledge that can be gained there. And then in a second case, there's a way to retrieve on the fly external data. So that could be like from your company's documents, it could be from the web, whatever, and then inject that into prompts into the model, which kind of grounds it and, like you say, would give you a citation. There's also, more agentic approaches to this where maybe there's multiple ways that you could get knowledge, maybe doing a web search or searching a certain database that you have access to, or any handful of sources that you've kind of curated as tools and you call them in a more automated way. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, obviously you are part of a team that have been exploring this very deeply from very early on, like you say, when these models made that jump. From your perspective now, both in terms of what you're building with Perplexity and also kind of how you generally see the ability to get accurate information from these models, how do you view those kind of categories in terms of their utility and what you're relying on for the accuracy element specifically?
The way I see it's going to unfold, I think the tools and sort of like agentic behaviors, I think that's where it's going. I think it's going to be the main bottleneck for this right now is just like models are not smart enough yet to take into account and sort of like reason all of the information that is out there. But I think it's going to be like a main component. So there's going to be like models. They're like very powerful already right now. They're like trained on a lot of data, like basically internet. They have a lot of internal information, internal knowledge, and they can do like already like very good job of synthesizing information. There's like certain things that they don't do well, and perhaps they never going to be do well those things, like for example, like like computation, like when you need to do like some maybe around like some code or like do like some sophisticated like math computations that like the LLM architecture, like as transformers, is like going to struggle at that. Also, because those models are like so big, sometimes it's going to be very expensive to them update very frequently. So you need a way to ingest some new information that just like happened and it's still not part of the LLM weights. You have a way to, and this is what we sort of like specialized. Also some private documents, as you mentioned, right? So sometimes if it's like enterprise, you have some of the documents that obviously the model was not trained on, and you kind of like maybe want to reason about those documents, right? So, and there's like all kinds of other tools that you can, eventually there is going to be like agents that is going to do like actions. Maybe you're going to like book a ticket, like buy a ticket or something like that, and stuff like that. So I think it definitely where it's going, it's going to be like a synergy. Everything's going to come together. We just need a top level powerful model that's going to kind of reason behind multiple things, and we'll need to have like long context windows, maybe like some memory as well, and then just like utilize those tools as much as possible. How we at Perplexity thinking about it, we are like, okay, so, and there's like multiple ways and multiple sort of like applications, multiple use cases of this general approach. We are primarily focusing on the information retrieval part of it. So kind of like initially web is the main component because there's like lots of things to instruct from web, but also we're thinking about how to integrate different data sources, maybe like some of the different databases. Maybe there's like some more complicated or like more specialized documents, like, maybe there's like PDFs or something like that, or like some financial data, things like that. The other aspect that I'm very excited about and we're working on is kind of right now we can do like a great job of answering like complicated questions that you can get answers on Google, but like still not something where you can ask expert and then can get an answer, right? Like what if I have like a question that is just like requires like multi-step of reasoning, so it requires like, okay, like searching web multiple times, analyzing information during the issue retrieval, and then like maybe refining the search. So kind of like those things that maybe going to take some time, but like if you do it yourself, you would spend like, let's say like an hour. So here, maybe the system would spend like 30 seconds and it's going to save you a bunch of time. So kind of like those use cases that can answer like very complicated questions. And we believe that there is a world for those type of questions. Technology like this is going to be useful.
As people are using, an answer engine like yours more and more often going forward, and you kind of alluded a moment ago to the fact that, LLMs are not the be all. There are things they don't do well, like mathematics and such, and a variety of other things I'm sure that we could all throw out there. But they're really powerful at what they do. But clearly there is a place and a need for both the LLMs, these largest models that they kind of suck up all the air in the news cycles, as well as many smaller models that are specialized, a mathematics model that you plug in. As we're looking at trying to use answer engines to retrieve information, and that information is increasingly multimodal in nature in terms of what you're asking. How does the architectures of those come together? This is a space, it's not the first time we've asked it here, but it's evolving so rapidly. We're no longer hosting a model, you're now hosting a whole collection, and they may be mixed with models that you're APIing out to and such. How does that look to you as you're building this company at this point?
It's going to be always like trade-off between like if you have like one powerful model, I mean, yes, it can do like lots of general things like super well, but like it's going to be slower, it's going to be more expensive. One of our like key principle is just like we want to do things very fast, so we can get like that answers as fast as possible. That means you have to design your system, like orchestration system, in a way where certain things will have to rely on like customized models, like and something that is much smaller, much faster, but it knows it's like a specialist model. So it's not a model that like knows how to do everything, but it knows how to do like one task. And basically the challenge here is like, how do you balance between this like general models and this like specialist models? And I think we've been doing this like from the very beginning. So like when you send the request to Perplexity, it's just like not one model. There is like, I don't know, at least like 10 different models trying to do lots of things with your request. It's like all kinds of like ranking models, bunch of like embeddings, all different like classifiers and stuff like that. And like the other trade-off here is just like with general model, let's see, one of the big, and I think it was like actually very critical component of why like a company like Perplexity in the first place became possible is it's like the speed of iteration. Like you literally can change the prompt and you can just get a new product like in a matter of like hours. Like imagine a couple of years ago, if you wanted to build something like Perplexity or like whatever other like Gen AI product, you have to collect data first, have to train the model, launch the product, see if this product makes sense. Does it have market fit or not? If it has market fit, then you like start collecting data and then you just like keep improving. So what been possible with GPT models like an API is just like this kind of like flipped over. So you very quickly can build a product, see if there is any signs of life for this product, and then you start collecting data, which is I think honestly the most important thing. And once you collect data, you can like distill it, you can build like many other like smaller models and kind of like optimize the experience. So you can make the models faster, you can specialize them. I think this is the key. I think this is honestly was like one of the most fundamental changes in the development. And we kind of like took advantage of this thing like early on and then still using, but it's still tricky. Kind of like imagine like every time you have this like specialized models and you have like, if you have tons of them, you have to then like treat each model, like care about each model separately. So if you want like retrain this model, so you have to spend some time on it. So You have to like evaluate it, so it becomes more difficult to manage. But on the other hand, you have some great benefits. So the key is just like you don't want to go like too overboard with those models, like if everything is on like customized models, but also you also clearly don't want to have just like one model that's going to do everything. So
Yeah, I have a question maybe related to that, which I think is a pain point a lot of people are feeling, and I'm guessing your teams have felt, which you even mentioned this, like you can make a small change in your prompt or create a new prompt, and all of a sudden it's almost like you have a new product, which is sort of like amazing in one sense and really frustrating in another sense. Because as you were just alluding to, it's like, oh, maybe I have these like 17 different things chained together and they all have prompts that I've worked really hard on. And then like tomorrow, llama 17 comes out or something, and now like it has a different character of behavior than the previous model that I was using. I'd love to use it, but now I have all of this. It's almost like AI model debt that I've got in my system. Do you have any perspective on that, or anything that sort of has happened in your experience in this regard?
yeah, this has clearly been a thing, and it's been happening quite often. And if I would guess, that's going to continue happening. One thing we like realized early on is, okay, so this is going to be the case. There is not going to be like one model that rules them all. I mean, even though like for some time it was like GPT-4, but like now we can see there's like particularly like Anthropic, Gemini, like Llama. There is like going to be a future where there's several frontier models, right? Because of that, we decided, okay, so like let's design our infrastructure and our system in such a way that it's going to be model agnostic, right? So, and then that means, okay, so there's like a ways where you can evaluate each component independently. There is a way where you can quickly change things up to adapt for like a new model and stuff like that. And that's it took some time to get there, but I feel like it was like a very correct decision for us. And then, so for example, one of the advantage we have over, let's say, like things like ChatGPT or like Claude or like basically one model providers companies is just like we can seamlessly integrate many different models, and like our users can like, okay, decide they want to use this model or they want to do that model. Like later on, as we progress, I think we can even like decide based on the complexity of the query or like the type of the query, we can like route to like a particular model that does the better job for those type of queries, and like minimize like maybe like some of the queries are super simple, you don't need to run like a very large model for those like to answer, so then you can like can optimize speed and things like that. So I feel like you have to just make a system in a way where it's like agnostic to the model.
What's up, friends? Have you ever had trouble accessing that favorite sporting event or that awesome show or that film even because it's not in your region? Well, our friends at NordVPN can help you switch to a virtual location to a country where it is available, unlocking a world of entertainment. Plus, it's not just about streaming, it's your go-to for online security. Protect your bank details, your passwords, and your entire online identity. If you're traveling, they can shield your data on public Wi-Fi, keeping you safe no matter where you're at. They also have this cool feature called threat protection. That means you can say goodbye to viruses, malware, and phishing sites because NordVPN will protect you no matter where you're at. They're one of the fastest VPNs globally. They ensure no buffering while streaming and no stops for your ISP from bandwidth throttling. It might sound costly, but think again. NordVPN costs less than a cup of coffee a month, and you can use one account on up to 6 devices. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/practicalai. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with our 30-day money-back guarantee. Once again, go to nordvpn.com/practicalai.
So to follow up on what we were talking about before the break there, I know that you were talking about really building around model agnosticism to be able to handle that. I couldn't help but wonder, occasionally as we get a new model out, it breaks new ground on modality, being added in, a whole new approach, that kind of thing. And so, how do you, as a business builder who is having to try to accommodate all these different models, when you have one that jumps out and has a completely new thing added in that was unexpected prior to the announcement, how do you, in the organization, how do you guys kind of pivot to accommodate that and keep that the agnosticism and yet provide that extra functionality that's now available? How do y'all tackle that problem?
The most important thing to be is to not be caught off guard and try to anticipate what's going to happen. I think that's that's very important, and it's kind of like, for the most part, I wouldn't say it was like too hard to predict what's going to happen, but after that, I think it's primarily like product decision, right? So like, does this new feature benefit your product or not? Do we want to like build something in product or not? So for example, one great example was image upload and kind of like multimodality, right? So we knew, it was like last year, we like knew for sure that this is going to happen at some point, because I mean there was like already like some smaller models that kind of like supporting that. We knew that much better model is going to come out, and then because of that, we kind of like in advance start first of all like understood like, okay, so this is going to be important for our project, so we can support like this and this and that, those use cases. And we decided to build infrastructure in advance and kind of like anticipate it. Obviously, we didn't fully like predict like how exactly it's going to operate, but it was like very close. So it was like required like literally like a couple of days to adjust. And then we were like one of the, very quickly can release it as a product. So it's having the system that it kind of general enough that can like support those like new modalities. It's very important. Get some great deal of anticipation, but also like sometimes like certain features that maybe come out, maybe they're like not useful for your product. You also don't want to like put everything into, okay, so like this is a cool feature, let me just add it to your product. So like that's always not that great idea in general. So only things that make sense, and if those things makes sense for your product, you likely already like thought about like how would you implement them in advance, so it's just like makes it a bit easier.
While you were talking, I was thinking there's sort of one axis that you have to navigate here around model releases and functionality and modalities, all of that stuff. There's sort of another maybe around UI and user experience. I is sort of multiple people making the comment, oh well, like the chat interface came out with ChatGPT, so everyone's sort of like focused around the chat interface. Is that the best way to utilize this sort of technology in the long run? There's probably a lot of exploration that's still open around UI and user experience with this type of technology. And certainly chat is relevant, and we're using it a lot already. I'm wondering from your perspective, especially as we see this functionality maybe more embedded in the physical world around that, whether that be like in our glasses with meta glasses, or in like kiosks in airports, or whatever those things are. What is your perspective on how important it is to explore new types of UI or user experience with this technology?
I believe like, and I mean, we kind of like, we're like very confident early on. Is just like chat interfaces is a temporary thing. It's just too limiting. It has like a lot of constraints, and that's why like we didn't follow the usual route. Like it was all of the like chatbots. They were like literally copied chat GPT and kind of like, okay, so put like chat interface. We kind of like thought a little bit more about this, and we designed it. I feel like ultimately right now we're still in this like early stage where like people care about the model itself, so like the model is the thing. But as this thing that get more advanced, like as more people start using Gen AI products, I feel like the main thing is going to be product itself. Like what kind of things can product do? Do you do it like better than this? Do you have like the best UI? Do you have the best UX? And that's why we kind of like early on was like been thinking about those things, and we kind of design our product in a way that is the mostly suitable for the things that we wanted to do, right? So if it's like search, it's like it doesn't make. We knew that like chat doesn't make sense for search. It's just like that's not how people search for information. that was like a very big factor, I think, in our success. The other thing, I guess, we also, even like last year, we start like prototyping and experimenting with this like concept of generative UI. So something where LLM can guide like what kind of like UI elements you can generate, and then like sometimes like one of the things in chat interface, like if you want to ask like a follow-up question, sometimes it doesn't make sense to ask it as a sentence, right? So maybe you want to like show like a checkbox or like a button or whatever, like if there's like it's just like, especially on the mobile, like everybody uses phones, right? It's just like not very convenient to type, especially if you're on the run, so you'd rather like press a button. That's why like maybe speech and I guess like voice technology is going to be one of the interesting modalities for sure, of like an interesting interface, because it's kind of it has a lot of advantages. Obviously, it has like lots of disadvantages too, but definitely going to be interesting. And I think like going forward, as we go towards like agentic behaviors and like more things going to become possible, I think it's definitely not going to be like chat interface. It has to be something else.
I'm really fascinated by this topic, and it's, I think, something that both Daniel and I have some passion for, and just in daily use and stuff. Yeah, I'm wondering, with you thinking about that kind of productization, do you think that's something that Perplexity engages in a direct way, or supports other companies through that? And then there are so many times in the course of a typical day where I'm wishing I had other ways of interfacing with these capabilities that we're talking about. And I'll give you just a trite example. I will take my dog for a walk at a nearby park every day, and that's my thinking time. That's where I'm really trying to be creative, and I'm walking, and I have to keep walking. I don't want to stand right now. I stop and I pull out my phone, and it's frustrating, and people are going by me, and I'm trying to hold my dog. But I want this experience. It might be while driving, might be while walking the dog, where this seamless way of utilizing these capabilities that we've grown accustomed to come about. Are you, how do you see yourselves being part of that next journey on the interface side? And B, do you have any ideas on how to get there? It's just, that's the next thing I want.
Definitely looking into this, I think, and we consider like multiple options. Either like certain things I think we can do ourselves, for certain other like things we probably have to work with some other like partners. Because I mean, yeah, but I truly share your kind of like experience, and I think it's just like if you sit in front of a computer, I think they are by far the best interface is the keyboard. I don't think you can do better than that. But yeah, if you are occupied with something else, if you're driving a car, maybe you're walking, there has to be something else. Like even like phone is, it's okay. Maybe like even like taking notes, maybe you like say a command and something like that, and you get voice back. That's already like something, but it misses like visual information. So you kind of like want to add that. So that means you probably have to have some sort of like glasses on. I think it will definitely happen, and we will try. We for sure we spend a lot of time this year improving our mobile app to do voice to voice, and we can like invested a lot into like voice generation. So for example, you can ask like various questions, like like if you need something quick, like you walk in, you like I want to have like a quick look up of information, so we support that. There is something, for example, for if you drive a car, we have this you can read up like the stories or like discover from Perplexity. That's also like AI generated voice, so it's kind of like you listen to a podcast or like a so that's super important. Yeah, I think that the next step is vision, and sort of like how do you get there?
Maybe one challenge that I've been thinking about this entire time while we've been talking relates to definitely a danger that I think people have identified as related to this new technology, which is you've already mentioned that you're kind of doing web retrieval or retrieval from certain sources as kind of a primary way of grounding answers, of ensuring accuracy of citations. But I know a lot of people are concerned about and thinking about this sort of idea of data poisoning, where we're putting out actually a lot of generated content on the web, right? And that proportion of human and generated content is going to change over time, which means even for retrieval systems, especially if you're doing web related searches, there's a potential that you could retrieve generated content itself and get in this kind of weird loop. Of course, there's a separate problem for like the models and how they're training. And I mean, this affects a lot of different areas, but I know probably you've been doing a lot of thinking about this because it's kind of key to how you operate as a system. Any perspective on that you feel like people should keep in mind kind of moving forward, or things that you're thinking about in terms of whether that's data curation or validation? Or I know a lot of people are talking about detecting generated content, and that's maybe hit or miss. So there's all of this kind of connected stuff, but generally around this idea of data poisoning or generated content on the web. Any thoughts?
To me, it's kind of like a technological problem. I feel like it's very reminiscent of like spam classifiers, right? Like just like whole another level, right? Like, but let's say like 20 years ago when you like receive emails, yeah, you would receive like a lot of spam, and then eventually people develop technology that can like detect it. I feel like something like this will happen. So it's always going to be like a constant battle, like the between like generators and discriminators. So at some point, like generators maybe going to be better.
It's like fighting malware.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same concept. It's definitely going to be an issue for sure. But my hope is that, and my belief that is, the good guys, the good generators, going to be just like it's a from machine learning fundamentals. Discrimination is much easier problem than generation. It's like much easier to tell what is good, what is not, than generated. So, and usually it seems like we've been more successful in like detecting this stuff, and I don't see any reasons why it's not going to continue.
So this has been really fascinating. As we wind up here and have you here for one more question, as we've talked about the future and have been kind of talking about what our expectations might be and how those might be fulfilled. Are there any other areas that we haven't addressed that you're interested in, and possibly as part of that, any way of kind of summarizing your own vision without it being just answering questions that Daniel and I have thrown at you, but your own vision for what the future looks like to you and what you want it to be and what Perplexity is trying to realize it as, to kind of paint a picture of what we might see over whatever time frame you want to address.
Yeah. So I'm very excited basically to get to a point where I have any question, any problem I want to have, and then just like go to Perplexity and like get an answer or like suggestion or even like perform an action for this. I already mentioned this thing where kind of like increasing the quality or like the complexity of the type of questions you can ask, and then making sure that the system will be able to handle those. I think this is definitely going to be the future, and I think we work hard on that. It kind of like opens up another dimension. You can just you can ask like lots of simpler questions, or you can just like have like one hard question. So it's kind of a complexity versus quality. And I think ultimately when you get information, you usually use it for some sort of like decision making, right? And so if we can then take this information that we retrieve for you and synthesize in a form of answer, can we also then do like some decision making for you? And can we perform actions on your behalf? So like imagine, I don't know, like imagine like you're researching something, maybe you want to like research to buy like best running shoes, right? So it's a pretty painful procedure right now because there's like so much stuff in internet, like you don't know what you trust. So that's why like, if you identify usually like running shoes, you just like stick with them forever because it's just you trust. But like things like that. So imagine if somebody will do like this, like research for you, like really nails it down, like weighs all the pros and cons, and then suggests, okay, so like, do you want to, this is the possible like variance, do you want to buy this stuff? And then you say yes, and then it goes like automatically buys it for you, and then like 2 days later it's delivered, and you only need to type like questions once. You don't have to push your credit card in and stuff like that. And there's like tons of examples. So kind of, I would say the future is like, first you would have to make sure that you can nail sort of like the information retrieval part and kind of like generating the most useful information. The next step would be like decision making. So like make decision based on this information. And then third step, do actions. So that's where I think I would be excited to get to that point.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you for being willing to take time to dig into a number of topics that I know our listeners are exploring themselves and also interested in. And certainly Perplexity has been leading in a lot of these areas. So keep up the good work, and thank you for the work and the perspective and taking time to talk. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the great questions, and thanks for having me.
All right, that is Practical AI for this week. Subscribe now. If you haven't already, head to practicalai.fm for all the ways. And join our free Slack team, where you can hang out with Daniel, Chris, and the entire changelog community. Sign up today at practicalai.fm/community. Thanks again to our partners at Fly.io, to our Beat Freaking residents, Breakmaster Cylinder, and to you for listening. We appreciate you spending time with us. That's all for now. We'll talk to you again next time.